This week, we are breaking down what it is that has made this particular video go completely viral. We have with us Stephanie Sims. Let me see if I can get, there we go, your blue box, now wave.
Hi.
Alexandra Riecke-Gonzales, and the newest member of the Code Breakers, Gina Fidel.
Hey.
All right, so let me get back to my screen. Now you're looking at me, and I'm Dennis Deuce. I'm kind of in a weird position. This is a whole show about women, and I was even called a woman in the green room.
That's not what we said, Dennis.
I don't recall that.
No, I don't think that's what happened. We'll have to get a ruling on this.
Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to get outvoted no matter what happens. So
You might need to take the hat off.
To become a woman?
I don't know. Just grabbing out of the air there.
All right, so we're going to talk about the song It's All About the Bass, and you guys have done the work. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Which one of you guys wants to start tackling this thing, and what direction do we want to go?
I'll go. Since I actually have two girls who love this song, I will go. I've heard this song myself probably 100 times since we started talking about doing this show. I think one of the things is the number of views that this video has. It's over 275 million now, which is comparable to huge artists like Ariana Grande or Jessie J or even Nicki Minaj. But as far as I understand it, Megan did not have a record contract, or at least did not have a label promoting a single at the time that this video came out. And so where I find it really interesting is how was she able, without a huge budget, to do tons of publicity, to really attract people to what she's saying? What is it about the lyrics or about the music or about her as a person that got people so excited about this video that it started sharing and it really became the viral thing that it is today?
Yeah, I mean it's all really great questions. I'm personally more interested in the fact that we know what she's actually talking about, right? I mean, she says treble and bass. For those that haven't listened to the song, shame on you. You should have listened to it. But she uses this musical metaphor in a way to talk about having a butt. I don't know how many times we're going to have to say that word in a different, I think it's going to get creative today. But, she's talking about it's all about that bass, and she's saying it's all about your butt. It's all about that asset. And I find it interesting because I personally am studying body image, and the prevailing body image in the States, at least in the U.S., is this ridiculously thin, idealized body image. So the increase in people listening to music and watching music videos that have to do with, and it's never, they don't usually talk about, we're not talking about boobs anymore, we're not talking about having large breasts, it's all about your ass these days. And it's interesting to me because I'm curious where that fits in with the thin ideal, and I'm curious about what that's doing to body image. Is it making it so that we're less dissatisfied with our body image, which I don't think is the case, or is it just changing what we're dissatisfied with? Do we no longer want to be thin? Are we now doing squats like crazy so that we have a butt like Nicki Minaj, And but you're right. I mean, when I think about this whole butt phenomenon, the first person I go to is Nicki Minaj. But Meghan Trainor has made a very interesting step into this field, and I'm also interested to see in what this does for her music career. Is she going to be stuck with this image from this song? Because I've seen another song from her on VH1, You Oughta Know Artists, and it's nothing like this song. So that's going to be interesting too.
Yeah, she's capitalizing on basically just a switch of focus. We can declare that it's best to be thin and think that that's sort of that's kind of a scapegoat, really, because if we're just switching it over to being heavier, we're still giving a good and bad, and there's still an ideal to kind of reach for, and it's still all completely dependent on whether or not the member of the opposite sex is paying attention. I mean, it's still all about how to get a guy and how to keep a guy and how to keep a guy happy. And so really nothing's improved here. It's just smoke and mirrors, in my opinion.
Right. Right, and Stephanie and I talked about that when we were first conceptualizing this episode. We talked about that Stephanie brought up that she does talk about what's the line, Stephanie, that she says
when she's talking about skinny girls?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Skinny bitch?
Yeah, exactly. And she says, you tell all those skinny bitches that, and then she says, no, I'm just playing, every inch of you is perfect from the bottom to the top. So she does try to have this message of we shouldn't be saying to each other, I don't like you because you're thin, or I don't like you because you have a big butt. We should all just accept ourselves. But what I find really funny, which comes back to your point, both of your points, is that we should all just accept ourselves as long as guys find us attractive.
Right. Right, and that's where our conversation was like, she does have this line that's like, accept your body as it is, you're skinny, that's your thing, I've got a butt, that's my thing, but we're still in this realm of objectification of the female body.
No question.
And but maybe you have to have a component of what is normal in society. Like if she just created a song that had nothing to do with the objectification of women, that was just about being beautiful inside and out, would it still have been viral? I don't know, because maybe you still have to stick with what society is comfortable with and just tweak it enough, just a little bit. Stick within the objectification of women, but change it a little bit so that it's a new, fresh idea that can go viral.
Well, we also can't ignore the style of the piece, too. I mean, it's very Barbie doll, it's very white and pure and pink and, pastel colors and very easygoing in that sense with this kind of hip, edgy languaging. It's a really peculiar, it's interesting how she plays on those opposites too, even within the style of the piece.
Well, and it's funny because when I heard it, once I understood what the lyrics were, it really reminded me of Lily Allen, for example, who is a master at playing style against content. I can't say the name of the song, but it starts with an F, and the second word is you. And it's a Lily Allen song, and it's this beautiful na 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 na. And she's actually saying something horrible, but it's in a beautiful way.
I love that song.
Which I happen to love the song too, but it's hilarious because you start singing and then you say to yourself, "Oh my God, I can't say that."
Yeah.
So the music.
I love that song. I've never played it for Cheryl. It's on my Pandora station, and because the juxtaposition is just
right.
Talk about jolting you out of the norm. Anyway.
Well, and I'm wondering if maybe we haven't hit on one of the aspects that made this go viral because of that, right? It gave this kind of intrigue to the piece because as you were talking, Alex, one of the things that hit me was I was thinking about Christina Aguilera, who did a song called Beautiful, right? Where she was not at all in the objectification. She was in the inner beauty and all that. And I don't recall that being one of her biggest hits. So maybe what you're saying is exactly correct, Alex. It has to be close enough to the norm so that people will actually listen to it, and you kind of got to hope to slip the message in somewhere.
But do you think she was intentional with that?
I don't know, because if you look at interviews, I've only seen 2 interviews, but the one interview I saw where they asked her about it, she said I just wrote it because I thought it was a fun song. You know, it was someone who I think was pressuring her to say she was a feminist and she wanted female empowerment. And I mean, you know, I think she's, what, 20 years old? So I think at some point she just kind of threw up her hands and said, look, I just wrote it because it's a catchy song and I enjoyed it. You know, don't try to read more into it than there is. But I don't know. I think that genuinely she feels that way. You know, she thinks everybody should just be who they are. But I don't know that she wrote the song, you know, specifically juxtaposing this bouncy, happy tune with this kind of heavier subject. I don't know, though. I'd love to hear from her. If she wants to tell us, that would be great.
That would be great.
Wow, 7-minute lull on an HOA. So, okay, so one of the things that I've been wanting to do is to touch on a couple of the videos that have come out that have been parodies. And I'm going to drop the links to these two videos in the show. But unfortunately, I've been having problems with my audio, so you'll have to read along, and we can just talk about these as they play. So, here we go. This one is a riot. I've never come across this family before, but they are a riot. So this one's all about the based.
Oh, okay. This is the Thanksgiving thing? Okay.
Yeah, this is all Thanksgiving based. But it's just a great video. And they have so much fun doing this. Have you guys seen this one yet?
Yeah, I have not. Oh, this is hilarious.
They actually they've put out a couple of, like, they did a back to school one that was great. They did another one for Halloween. This particular family, they have a lot of fun with a lot of these songs that would generally be considered inappropriate, and they make it kid family friendly. It's great.
Oh, and the dad and the mom are just, I mean, they're just amazing actors. They're just really, really funny, their facial expressions and stuff. But, you know, let me turn off my overlay so you can see the data on this here down at the bottom. I don't know if you can see this, but they've had 1.2 million views on this particular video, and it's the Holderness family, and their channel, all told, has 75,000 subscribers and 26 million views across 58 videos. I really want to get these guys on the show at some point in time and talk to them about what they're doing, because they're just having fun mostly, but they do use it to brand themselves, because they do this kind of thing for some of their clients. They own a company called thegreenroom.com.
Okay, because that was my question. Was it's very cute, but is what they're doing also trying to build their own presence so that, you know, they can either create some monetization or to draw attention to their family? But okay, so it's something they do really just for fun?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it really looks like it's something they do for fun. So back on this screen right up here at the top, it says, if there were a superlative award given by the internet, we'd win people who have the most fun making videos. That's their about page on Google+. Or I mean on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, well, and I like the idea that we're talking about the parodies, Dennis, because that's the other thing that to me kind of indicates that it's gone past just, hey, there's tons of people that like this song. Is there's probably, I've seen, I think, at least 6 or 7 different parody videos, and I'm sure there's more. I haven't looked at all of them. But the fact that people are wanting to take the song and turn it into something, put their own unique twist on it, says that it's more than just, hey, I really like that song.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost become, which is interesting because you don't usually see it with videos. It's become kind of a meme, which which is, I mean, to memeify, that's going to be a word now. To memeify a video takes so much effort. So, I mean, these people are willing to put in this time and effort to create something new out of something that she's done. I mean, I'm sure you're going to show it at some point, Dennis, but the Star Wars one, that must have taken them quite a bit of time. It took a lot of people.
Yep. That's the thing, is the number of people on screen. You know, I was watching that one this morning getting ready for the show, and we are going to play it here in a minute, but you know, there's the character playing Luke Skywalker in the outfit, you know, that he uses when he's in his X-Wing fighter. And I just assumed that that was the person that was doing the lead singing. And when they do there's one close-up, and it's actually a whole different person that isn't anywhere else in the video. Like, I mean, that's just human time, and time costs money. It just does. You know? So, yeah, this is not shoddy workmanship. This is some serious stuff.
And they're almost guaranteed to get to have a really far reach because they're riding the wave of this other viral piece. So it's kind of worth the effort then, right? If they're willing to put it in, they know they're going to have a hit. They know that it's just written in.
Yeah, and I wish, I haven't seen him yet. I wish Craig was, yeah, he hasn't shown up. I wish Craig was, because Craig has talked about the potential difficulty of trying to copy another meme, and how that can be a difficult thing to achieve. And yet it's happening a lot around this particular video. There are a lot of videos with over 1 million views that are parodies.
But David Wells, I just noticed he wrote in parody as coattail riding with a question mark, and I'd say, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Do you think that some of that also has to do, Dennis, with the fact that relatively early on there was a lot of discussion about this? For example, I know that Meghan Trainor was on Jimmy Fallon, and they did a version of All About That Bass with the Roots, right? So what happened is, whether it was done consciously or unconsciously, there were lots of other people carrying the message for her, and it gave it a lot more weight. So she got into a lot of audiences that she probably wouldn't have gotten into just on the basis of her own video.
Right. I'm trying to think about, in every single episode so far, we've talked about relatability. And maybe it's the fact that she wasn't popular before this song that makes it relatable. Maybe it's because I'm thinking of her in comparison to Nicki Minaj. Because again, Stephanie, we had this conversation about why do we think that Meghan Trainor's All About the Bass is getting all of this attention when Nicki Minaj's Anaconda, if you haven't seen it, it's like soft porn, so I apologize when you watch it.
Barely soft.
But, yeah. But, when you see something like that, there was a discussion about that, or we're going to have to talk about it, Kim K's booty on the cover of a magazine, which is getting memeified. There are parodies of it that are being created, but what is it that's setting Kim Kardashian and Nicki Minaj apart from Meghan Trainor? What's the difference between these people? Because I feel like Meghan Trainor and the parodies with her song are much nicer than the parodies we're seeing with Kim Kardashian and the discussion around Kim Kardashian and Nicki Minaj versus the discussion around Meghan Trainor's song.
Do you think it's the kind of more adult feeling theme? I mean, Megan's is really directed towards younger girls, and it's very clearly more adolescent and teenage style.
Is that why I like it so much?
Yeah, that must be it.
Well, do you think there's also, you mentioned it early on, Gina, this notion of the underdog, right? Because Nicki Minaj and Kim are both well-known figures and honestly in the business of getting attention for themselves because that's how they make their money, right? And again, I got to go back and check the details, but if I remember correctly, Meghan Trainor was not actually a performer.
No, she was not.
She was a songwriter. And so what happened was she kind of was brought into performing, not against her will. Clearly she wanted to do it, but it was not like she was out there saying, I want to be the next Nicki Minaj or I want to be a pop star. She was writing songs and all of a sudden kind of had this Cinderella story of, I wrote a song, I sent a demo tape, and this guy liked it so much he wanted me to sing it, kind of plucked from obscurity and put into this whole realm that she wasn't looking for, if you will.
Yeah, and I saw, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're good.
I saw one thing that she said about how that day she walked into the room thinking, this time I want it to be about me, or something along those lines. I might be misquoting that, but she entered the space with a desire to step out from behind the curtain. And it's interesting, too, she's using, I mean, about the underdog, she's using street language. It's almost gangy. And look at who her backup singers are. Look at the Jimmy Fallon piece, the diversity in that. Has anybody taken note of that?
That's great.
So it's an interesting, she's sort of stepping into a culture that she's not, we don't know if she's really part of. And talking about riding on coattails, in a way, that's really supporting the whole underdog thing.
Right. That's a good point. I think I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I know we all love Meghan Trainor, but I'm gonna do it. I think part of it is that she is not as open about the sexual aspects of her song. Her song is it's veiled in metaphor. It's very veiled in metaphor. Whereas when you look at Kim Kardashian, I mean, her ass is just out there.
There's no veils.
You know? No. I mean, it's shiny, but that's pretty much it, right?
Oil's a veil, isn't it?
And
or champagne.
Right.
And you look at Anaconda,
right.
Like I said, it's like soft porn. I mean, it is very, very hypersexual. And Nicki Minaj has said that is how she feels empowered. She feels empowered by being that sexual and being that open about her sexuality. Whereas at least in the US, we are very uncomfortable with that. We don't talk about sex very often. You know, we have very religious roots in the US, so we don't talk about those kinds of things. So I think we are more comfortable with Meghan Trainor's version of talking about the female body and objectifying it, even when she's not meaning to. Whereas with Nicki Minaj and Kim Kardashian, we're more comfortable being like, how dare you put your body out there like that? We don't have sex here. What are you guys talking about? We don't care about butts. No, we don't associate the sexual activities that go with having a big round ass, right? That makes us uncomfortable. So I think that kind of plays into it.
Sort of, but you know, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and yes, it's definitely a softer version. But I mean, she does say, my mama told me that boys want more booty to hold at night. I mean, as a mom, I have a problem with that because it's not something I would necessarily share with my daughters. You know, I might tell them your body is beautiful, but I'm not going to say because there's some guy that wants to grab it at night. And so I think you're right, it's a little more veiled, but I'm wondering if it's not also the fact that she's new. You know what I mean? Because if you think about it with any type of anything really, but drugs or porn or any other adrenaline, you build up something of a tolerance to it. And so to get any kind of reaction as you go through the process, you need more. Well, Meagan, to me, is at the very start. Nobody knows her. So this is her starting point. What's going to be interesting to see is, does she ramp up as she's been in the business longer, because she realizes, okay, that soft stuff doesn't work anymore, and now I need to go a little harder core. And we're really comparing someone's beginning to someone's middle, or later stages when we talk about her versus Nikki or Kim. Those are people who've been on the scene a lot longer than she has. So I like the point, but I'm wondering if there's not just a question of, she's starting and they've been in the biz for a while. What do you guys think?
No, that's a good point. I mean, when you look at Nicki Minaj's other songs prior to this one, they are not nearly as, I mean, like her Starships, her song Starships. Right. The song itself is like, but when you watch the music video, when I saw the music video, I was like, how are you humanly possible? Like, the music video, she's wearing, basically nothing the whole time, and I'm just like, I don't understand how her body is physically possible. I don't. But that was, that the song itself wasn't anything close to what Anaconda is. So I think you do have a point that they tend to, and Kim Kardashian, she's always been known for her butt, and she did, her claim to fame is her sex tape, right? Which I personally haven't seen, so maybe we've already seen enough of Kim. I don't know, I haven't seen it, but she's never done a magazine cover like the one that she did. So it might be, you might be right. It's just they've been there for so long that they're like, all right, well, I'm just gonna pull it all out. Just gonna put it all out there at this point.
Right. Well, and I think the other question to ask ourselves is the difference in ages, right? Because and we know this as women, as you go through your life, the things that you think about yourself and your body when you're 15, 16, or 20 are not the same ways that you view yourself when you get to be 25 or when you get to be 30. And so perhaps what's also happening is they're maturing in their sexuality, and that's showing more in their music or content, whereas Meagan is still back at, 19, 20 years old, and that's what she feels appropriate for her. So I don't know, but it's a great question. I mean, it's really interesting to see what's going to happen.
And I did a search last night for objectifying women in the media, and I looked at the images, the hundreds of images, and I thought I was pretty savvy, and I was really shocked. So I'm not sure about the we don't talk about this. Maybe we don't talk about it, but we sure look at it, and we sure purchase driven by it, and we sure live our lives out based on it. So if it's a taboo that the only thing left is that we're not talking about it, it's pretty interesting, because everything is about sex and the objectification of women. I mean, it's just completely, utterly rampant. No, it's not even worth mentioning. It's so obvious. But I think that age thing is really interesting that you're mentioning. It's really interesting, because I think that, and I don't know, tell me, because you're a mom, but it seems like moms and teenage girls are really hungry for the message that our bodies are beautiful no matter what we look at, and the message that really it's about being healthy and strong and fit and smart and exercising our minds and just looking at all of our other qualities. So I think the culture, at least some portion of the culture, is really hungry for that. So then this comes along, and look, we can use this to help raise our girls. And then people are missing all of the hidden messages in it, which are really just as archaic as the skinny girl. So
yeah, well, and I think that's interesting, Gina, because one of the things that I like about the song, and I am a mom to one boy and two girls, so I got both sides. And you do parent differently, which is something I didn't think would happen before I had kids, but you do. Boys have totally different issues than girls. But what I like about this is it gives you the opportunity to say to your daughters sometimes you're your own worst enemy. Because to me, that's one of the most important messages from the song is he says at the very beginning, I think it's pretty clear, I ain't no size 2, right? So she owns, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I look like. And then she goes on to say, I'm okay with that for reasons that we may not agree with. But, you know, ultimately, to me, the message is one of accepting yourself and being comfortable in who you are. And that's where, as a parent, it can be a really great thing to teach your kids, because then you want to say, yeah, there's days when you feel crappy. But if you feel crappy and this song makes you feel better, or wearing this particular t-shirt or this color or carrying this bag or, you know, psyching yourself up helps you feel better, that's what makes you beautiful. Not that you wear a size 2 or that Jimmy down the street likes you.
Right. I mean, you do bring up a really good point, and that is that this is a conversation starter. Right. You're right, Gina. One of the biggest issues in body dissatisfaction is that no one tells us to recognize how much objectification literature there is out there. No one recognize that all of these images in the media are encouraging this objectification of ourselves. We just naturally pick it up through culture. So the fact that this starts that conversation is definitely a positive to it. If there are other positives to the song, but the fact that it does start the conversation is a good one. And I do need to address Dr. V's question about what about the objectification of men. Yes, he is totally right. It is a growing problem. However, the difference between men and women that we see most often in the media specifically is that men, it's that they're, they have to have a six-pack, and they have to have a certain leanness to them, and they have to have this dominant male characteristic. With women, it's generally associated more with sex, and unfortunately more with sexual violence. So that's why it's been so much more of a concern with women. However, men do suffer from body dissatisfaction. There is more and more research going into that, which I personally think is really important, because with that need to have those dominant characteristics as a man, with that need to be, very masculine and not have emotions, that being the prevailing cultural ideal for men, it's really, really hard for men to come forward and say that they are dissatisfied with their body and that they do need help with their body image. So the fact that we're devoting more and more research to that is definitely a positive. And you're right, Dr. V. It is a problem for men too. It's just a slightly different problem, and we see it more in women, unfortunately.
Well, and something that's interesting.
Wait,
Oh,
just a second. So that sound, I'm going to now start playing it every time we break 100 comments. So, yeah, thanks. Keep the comments going. When we get to 200, you'll hear again. Okay, now, Stephanie, go on.
Well, what I was saying is that this brings us back to something, Alex, you and I have talked about before, which is Brene Brown's work. One of the things, Chris, you kill me, Dr. V. But one of the things that she talks about is the disconnect between what's put forward as the social norm for attractive bodies out there and what men actually feel, because she did a lot of work on both sides. And one of the things that struck me about her research was she had lots of guys who said, if you're willing to get naked in front of me and have sex with me, I don't really care what your body looks like, not because I'm objectifying you, but because that's such an intimate situation that I feel something. It's not what I'm looking at, it's what I'm feeling in that moment that creates that connection. So, if you're in the room and you're thinking about back fat, you're totally missing the point, honey. That's not it, And so I found that really interesting that men, that was the feedback she got from men. And so in a certain sense, what's happening is there's these norms that are coming from outside, and we all see them, and we're all trying to abide by them, but nobody actually genuinely believes that that's what it should be. You know, so instead of talking to each other and saying, I like the way you look, we're out there saying, oh, I don't look right, I don't look right. And we're missing the person right in front of us who's saying, but I'm here with you now. I wouldn't be here if I didn't like you.
Absolutely. And really just there's literature that says that the thin ideal that is being pictured in the media today, there is only actually like 5% of the entire world population that fit that image. But since we're inundated with it over and over again, we think that it is the norm. So you're totally right.
So the question I would want to ask, though, is of that 5%, what percentage of those are actually unhealthy? I'm throwing out Pareto's principle on this, and 80-20. I'll bet you 80% of those people are really quite sick.
Yeah, they are. And even if they fit the thing is, even if they fit the thin ideal image, that doesn't mean that they have the face of the models. That doesn't mean that they have, you know, a lot of the fitness models that we're seeing. That doesn't mean that they actually look like those fitness models. It just means that they have the body fat percentage of the images that we're seeing. So you're right, there is a potential that a lot of them are really unhealthy, and there are some people that are naturally just that thin, but I can guarantee you there's something about their bodies that they don't like, and they tend to be just as dissatisfied in studies when they have, it's generally women, sorry Dr. V, but when they have these women come in and look at images and then they take a body dissatisfaction and self-esteem test, most of the women, regardless of their size and their weight, have body dissatisfaction after viewing the images, because we see what we want to see. You know, we see what we think is there, even if it isn't. So even those that are thin, naturally thin, they see, well, I don't have an ass. Well, I don't have a butt. No one's going to want me, right? So it's still, body dissatisfaction is just an issue in general, and most research points back to the fact that we are a culture of body objectification. We are a culture that separates the self and the body, and we put our self-worth in our bodies and our image rather than our personal characteristics.
Yeah, and the focus on particular singular body parts exemplifies that even further, because then we're not seeing a whole person, we're just seeing a separated out part, which is really damaging. And I think it's really damaging too for young relationships, because then people are viewing their partners as parts instead of whole people. And it's a damaging thing, I think, for romantic relationships too, and why people are having such a hard time finding their mate, finding their partner, because that's always going to be entering into it. I just wanted to comment, David Amerland, thanks for being here, David, brought up an article that Marisa Gowdy shared on a post of his earlier this morning that was just remarkable, about a Barbie story. And I really recommend that everybody go and read that article, because it's astounding. I'm not going to describe it to you, just go read it. It's just a really blatant, I mentioned bait and switch and smoke and mirrors. It's a good example.
Yeah. Well, one question I have, and you kind of touched on it, both of you did, is as an individual, when we buy into the body objectification, right? Like, the only way I'm going to be attracted to somebody is based on this, right? What's on the outside. We end up setting ourselves up for unhappiness, right? Because ultimately, if you have to modify what's on the outside to be attractive to somebody else, that's a no-win situation, realistically, because, you know, yes, you can have plastic surgery, you can do certain things, but, you know, ultimately your body is the way it is. Would it be a better idea for us to try to teach, particularly kids, I'm thinking about my girls on this point, ways to be more comfortable with who they are, as opposed to focusing so much on the objectification. And then, of course, the big question is, how do we do that? You know, is this song all about that bass a step in that direction, or is it really just setting us back because it continues to objectify the body, even if it's a nicely done way of objectifying?
Oh, I could talk about this for like 2 hours. Really,
That's not
sit back and
time.
let Alex go.
Guys, I have been just popping up the comments and really not bringing them into the conversation, but this one right here has to be brought up because Jessica's business page is just fantastic. She says, I've gotten a lot of feedback on my business page because I use myself and other ordinary, regular people to model my clothing. It's been positive. I am a size 12-14, and I have gotten message after message telling me that they are happy to see a not size 0.
That is awesome, and that is a step in the right direction. The hardest thing, and I think I wrote this in a comment to you, Stephanie, the hardest thing about this is rather than going straight to telling our children, you know, you should have a great body image, it's okay, your body isn't everything, focus on you, focus on the self, you have self-worth. Rather than first focusing on that, we have to point the finger back at us and ask ourselves, how are we continuing the objectification ideal? Because there are a lot of things that we do that we don't realize we're doing that continues that. For example, if you are a mother, and it doesn't mean that you're sitting there and you're saying, well, you look fat in that, which some moms do, and that's really upsetting. But if you're a mother, if you're an aunt, if you're a grandmother, and you're around your kids and you say, man, I look fat today, man, I look ugly today, you are actually continuing that objectification process. And that's really hard for us sometimes because Stephanie's right. We have those days where we're like, man, I do not look good today. I am looking raggedy, right? Like we have those days, but being aware of ourselves and who we're around, and if we're around kids particularly, or when I'm around my students, I am very careful because they're still, I mean, yes, they're 18, 19, but they're still they're in a very important part of their lives in the objectification process because they are right in the midst of, you know, they're starting to look for a mate, they're starting to really, you know, they're in a new place, they are looking for that self-worth. I am very careful about the way that I talk about myself around them, the way I talk about others, the way I talk about everything, because we really have to look at ourselves. And it could be, I mean, sometimes I think about what I'm wearing around my students. I'm like, you know what? I should probably cover up a little bit more because you don't know the message that you're sending. So it's awesome to have these conversations. I think that is the next step in the process, is just having a conversation about what is objectification culture, what does it mean, how is it affecting us, and what are the images and conversations that are encouraging it. But before we do that, we have to look back at ourselves and say, okay, what am I doing that encourages this culture? And I am no saint in this at all. I mean, I am a workout fiend. I love going to the gym and I love working out and I wear tank tops all the time. I'm going to the gym after this, and I have to ask myself constantly, how am I encouraging this? How am I continuing this particular part of our culture that I know has had mental effects on a lot of people? So that would be my personal advice.
Yeah, I like that, but it's so hard. I mean, you're right. And I think that, again, if you're at a place where you can start a conversation and even just be honest about, some days I don't like the way I look, right? You know, with your kids, as opposed to saying, God, I look fat in this. If you just say, okay, you know what, I'm feeling really kind of yucky, and at least to yourself, and if you're in front of your kids, to them, so that they can see the feeling exists, but you don't have to describe it as bashing your body or I need to lose 5 pounds or whatever. You just need to understand the feeling and be with it.
Exactly. Or even, even just changing it from I need to lose 5 pounds to, you know what, mom needs to work on getting a little bit healthier. Do you want to join me? Let's start eating more vegetables. Focus on the health rather than the weight. Even if in your mind you're saying I need to lose 5 pounds. I need to lose 5 pounds. Focus on what you're saying out loud. And hopefully that there is research that says, you can fake it till you make it. If you're saying out loud it's about your health, hopefully eventually that'll become the mindset that you have.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we can thank Meagan for is that it's actually affording us this opportunity to have the conversation. So as much as I may disapprove of the underlying messages in the song, it's getting us to talk. So that's really all that matters in the end. And I think that working with our kids, this was really on my mind a lot. I have a number of nieces, and I was really conscious, even when they were 2 or 3, of not saying, oh, you're so beautiful, and not always reinforcing that idea that their appearance and how they look physically was what was foremost in my own mind, even if I was completely enthralled with how beautiful they were. And just to constantly be trying to reinforce their other good qualities. I can't even count the number of birthday cards of writing good qualities that you have, and not putting beautiful first consciously. But I also think that as our girls get older, that having this conversation, it's so completely impacted into the media, it's so pervasive that no matter how much we protect our kids and kind of try to insulate them from some of the ugliness and some of the issues, it's going to bombard them anyway, even if they're not raised with TV, even if they don't have popular magazines in the house. It's even if they go to some, Waldorf school, it's still going to be there. And so we can't protect them from being, I just lost my word, but we can't protect them from that. So having the conversation, looking at magazines together, just sort of hitting it straight on is probably part of a good solution, so that we're not creating a new taboo.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately that's part of why we're examining all these different viral elements, right? Is to understand why they went viral, but also to try to understand what the impact is. Because if what happens is more and more of what is already happening continues to be popular, in this case objectification, if what happens is every time something comes along about objectification, it gets really popular, then the messages are even harder to combat, because then that's more of what everyone's seeing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not making sense, but anyway, I guess my question is there any way that we could possibly create some viral content that would promote the types of things that we're talking about as opposed to the objectification?
Yeah, great question.
That is a good question.
Something else just occurred to me also. One of the reasons that we're fighting upstream is because we're really hardwired to procreate, right? So part of how we're made is to recognize when we walk in a room who is to seek out who's the target that's going to help me make a baby, raise a child, continue the race, right? Mm-hmm. So we're kind of fighting against that, and then when it's blatantly pronounced in a song like that, this will help you find the person that you can procreate and continue the human race with. I hadn't thought of that before.
Absolutely. That and socially comparing ourselves to others is natural within us. Comparing ourselves on multiple traits. We just focus a lot with social comparison and body image because of the objectification culture, but we compare ourselves with the others around us all the time, and it's actually a healthy way for us to better ourselves. It's how we know, oh, this person is relatively similar. If it's an equal comparison, you're like, this person is relatively similar to me, they're a little bit better in this, so I'm going to get better at that. It's a healthy way for us to encourage ourselves to get better, to be better at certain things. So that's also a natural thing for us to do, as well as look for this mate. So we can't, you're right, we can't avoid body image. We can't avoid comparing ourselves to others. We can't avoid basing part of our decision on a mate on the way we look. We just need to not make it the only reason. And I've noticed as I get older that, right, and as the only person in this room that is still looking for a mate, that it does change with age. When I was like 18, I was like, oh, you're hot. Yeah, you're it. You're it. Now as I get older, I'm like, okay, what do you do for a living? Can we have a conversation for more than 10 minutes? Are you trying to get in my pants, or are we gonna, build a relationship first? As I get older, I care less about the way that they look, but I'm not going to say that it doesn't still factor in, because it goes back to that instinct of, I want my kids to be able to find mates also, and part of that does have to do with body image.
Yeah. Well, something that's interesting, and I just thought of it as we were talking about how we could create virality. Is that a word? Virality.
Yes.
About healthy images. I don't know if you guys saw a while back, but Dove, the soap company, did a series of commercials. One of which was where they interviewed women, and they had the women sit on one side of a screen and an artist sit on the other. And the women would describe themselves, and the artist would sketch. And then they would have someone from the woman's life come in and describe the woman, and the artist would sketch. And invariably, the woman's picture, the one when she described herself, they were all tired and old and kind of not very attractive. And when the people in her life described her, she was beautiful. And so, I would love to see us be able to create more of that type of image or that type of video that would show people, it starts with you. And if you can change the way that you feel about yourself, and you can genuinely see the beauty you have, that is better than going out and giving all these lectures and saying to your children, oh, you should be like this, you shouldn't worry about how you look, etc. So, I don't know. We should brainstorm. How can we do something like that?
Yeah.
We should. Dove has done that's a really great example. Dove has done a lot of those commercials that are pro-positive. They did the ones where I remember it was a magazine ad, and it was women of a variety of weights, and they were naked. I mean, they had like their arms across their chest, but they would be laying on their side, so you didn't really see everything, but they were naked, and they had quotes next to each woman about, how, like, a positive quote about how she feels about her body. And Dove has done a fantastic job associating themselves with that positive body image mentality, I guess. So I think you're right.
Well, and from the virality standpoint, not only has done a fantastic job, but I have seen that brought up in 10 or 15 blog posts, 3 or 4 books. It came unplanned in this show. So from the standpoint of brand awareness, this has been huge for them.
Absolutely. I now buy Dove. It is good for your skin too, but...
Yeah.
Okay, this is interesting, actually. David Wells just put this up. And you answered it. Literally, I was reading it at the same time you answered it.
Yes, well, it did.
Yeah,
me.
And me too.
Not me.
It was a brand I hadn't considered before, and I'm just not that sensitive to it. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
However, what is interesting to me, sorry, I just went on YouTube to look, and that video we talked about, it's called Real Beauty Sketches. Guess how many views it has? Less than 5 million.
Really?
It's over a year old. It's got less than 5 million views. Meghan Trainor's video is like 4 months old. It's got 275 million views. We're not quite there yet.
No, unfortunately not. But at least it's a good example of someone trying to work on it, at least.
Yeah, well, and what I'd really be interested to find out is why is it, we still haven't come to a conclusion, I think, and I know we're running out of time, but why is it that this other stuff connects so well when we're all kind of agreeing that it's not how we really feel? Why do we want to watch that when it doesn't represent how we really feel? Are we that afraid of what we feel that we just don't want to see it on video, or why? I don't know why.
Brenna Brown would say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're all really afraid of how we feel pretty much all the time. But
Yeah.
that's a whole other topic.
This is feeling like a network roundtable take 2.
Yeah. Oh no.
Oh, we should have thought of that, Dennis. You should have thought of that before you put us all together today.
But
Yeah, that is
know.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm actually looking at this video. This is it right now. This is the video that Jessica Maynard put up with this comment, and so the link is already in the event. But this is a really interesting video. Of course, I'm having audio problems, so you can't hear what they're saying. But one question asked to 50 different people.
Is this the one where they ask, what's the one thing you would change?
Yeah.
I love it. The little kids are so cute. She's like, I want a mermaid tail. That's all. I'm like, good idea. Good idea. I want one too.
Maybe we should make that the next video. My mermaid tail's better than yours.
So.
But it is a really great example of the fact that it is cultural. It is very cultural that we move to focusing on the pieces of ourselves. I mean, in that, all the older people are like, I would get rid of the bags under my eyes, or I would take out the fat in my stomach, or it's all very aesthetic, I guess. Whereas with the little kids, it's like they want superpowers, and one girl says, it might before she says the mermaid tail, she says, well, I don't want to change anything. I like my body. I don't want to change anything. And that's so, it's just like that gives me goosebumps, because I'm like, what if we all felt like that? What if we all were like, you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay with the way that I look. It doesn't affect the way that I feel about myself. It is a very good example of we're culturally encouraging this. And there are studies on elementary kids that they associate, there's this whole look at Disney. Sorry, Disney. I know Mickey Mouse had his birthday yesterday, but there's this whole look at how Disney really encourages the negativity around body image. If you look at a lot of the villains, they're ugly. Right. And a lot of the protagonists are very pretty. Right. And yes, they're pretty, they're thin, and the kids associate those qualities with those features, so that when they see, like Ursula from The Little Mermaid, yeah. When they see a larger person, they immediately associate it with very negative behaviors and characteristics, unfortunately. So we're starting them young. We're starting them young.
Well, and as a parent, for example, now that you say that, what happens to Ursula, right? Well, she gets really huge when she gets really bad. Mm-hmm. I never thought of it that way, but that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, I was really, when I saw Frozen, I was so excited to see it because everybody was like, oh, it has such a positive message. And in the first 5 minutes, I was let down because the protagonists were thin, beautiful. Yeah. I do like the message because I love my sister. So I'm not hating on that. I think your sister should be your true love. But I was like, oh, you guys could have. But again, this goes back to the Meghan Trainor song. Is one step enough? They did take that one step of not making it about a man and a woman, about making it about familial love. So is that enough to make me like, okay, it's okay. They'll do it next time.
Yeah. And the
Is
bad
that the
guy
movie?
wasn't ugly. That's the other thing. The bad guy was very handsome, right?
Right.
So.
Is
Good
that the
point.
movie where they actually worked to expand the thin figures on the females, where they gave them a little bit more girth? And I saw an article about that, and I was so disappointed because they made this big deal about making the body types more natural and true to real life, and they weren't at all. I mean, they took a waist that was this big and made it this big, you know.
Maybe it was that one. The one that I did appreciate, I know we're over time. The one that I did appreciate was the Crudes.
Yes. That was great.
That was in terms of body image, I was like, this is awesome, because they did it, you know, they did it more accurate to the time period rather than, and you know, she's like this, she's a large, but she's strong and she can run really fast. So I thought that one was, I even like that one better than Brave.
You know, you bringing that up reminds me of David Wells' comment early on. I want a woman that can beat me up.
Well, and it's funny because in the Crudes, at a certain point, he tries to pick her up. Remember, he tries to pick her up, and he goes, "Oh, you're heavy," and she smiles down at him and says, "Thank you."
Yeah, exactly. That's why, that's one of my, I'm like, okay, you guys gotta, I don't know, who did that, Pixar?
I think it was Pixar.
Yeah.
It was good. It was really good.
It was. Okay, we're
And
over.
it also had a great message.
It did. Oh my gosh, I cried because I'm a daddy's little girl. Oh my gosh, I cried when they got separated.
Yes.
Oh,
At
so
at my house, when we watch it, the kids do a tear check. Someone comes over and touches my cheek. Is she crying yet?
All right, so this week what we're going to do with closing thoughts, because I did promise to play this Star Wars All About the Base. Again, no audio. So I'm going to play that and show that while we go through closing thoughts. We're going to go Alex, and then Gina, and then Stephanie, and then I'm going to tell you what's up next week. So here we go. It's All About the Base, Star Wars style.
all right, so I guess I'm starting. My personal closing thoughts is I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation, because the more I dive into the body image literature, the sadder I get, and the more I realize how important these conversations are. So I just want to say thank you all for being a part of this conversation and being out there, and I'll definitely hop into the comments when I get a chance.
Gina, you're up.
I'm sorry, I was just crashed and I just got back, so I don't know what I'm up for.
You're up for closing thoughts.
Oh. Well, I think that it's really important that we watch really carefully for the hidden messages, and I think that's one of the things that I really came away from this whole topic and all of the kind of research and time I spent looking into this. And I was very heartened to see how many articles mentioned what I'm calling the hidden messages. So people are on to her, and they're on to what's going on with this, and that's a relief to me. I was very happy to see that not everybody's been brainwashed into thinking this is a giant step forward, but it may be a nice small step forward, and I do think that we can, we got to take whatever we can get. So having something at least to examine is something. It's not nothing. So that's my closing comment.
Yep. Well, I think my closing thought is I want to find a better way to balance out this disparity between what everybody says we should want and what we really want. Like that, when I looked at that Dove commercial and I saw it only had 5 million views, my heart just sank. I was like, oh my God, you're kidding. Everybody needs to see that. So what I'm hoping, and code breakers everywhere, you need to help with this. I think this should be our next project, is finding a way to make things that encourage what we've talked about today as mainstream or as viewed or as viral as Meghan Trainor's video. And again, I agree with Gina. I think that Meghan Trainor's video is a great step in the right direction as a conversation starter, but sometimes that leaves too much to chance. Because some people aren't comfortable having the conversation, some people don't know how to have the conversation, some people just won't have the conversation. So I would love any suggestions from anyone in the audience or any of the code breakers about what we could do to get our girls and boys thinking about themselves, you know, how they can love themselves and how they can be comfortable with who they are instead of being so focused on, gee, what I look like on the outside is all that really counts.
All right, well, Alex, thank you so much. Gina, glad to have you on the team. You're a huge asset. Stephanie, thank you for your thoughts. Next week, we are going to be doing myself and David Wells. If you don't know who David Wells is, that's Griswold Grimm. He came out of the closet. Sorry, Grizz, Dave. Anyway, so next week, we're going to be very on topic because, well, a week from Friday is Thanksgiving. So a week from today, we're going to be or a week from Thursday, we're going to be talking about the whole Black Friday phenomenon and where that came from, how it's developed into the insanity that it is. I mean, literally, people die pretty much every other year for about the last 10 years. And we're going to talk about how it got to where it is and what we might be able to learn from that phenomenon in helping us promote our own businesses. Hopefully we won't be creating things that kill people, but anyway. Thanks a lot for watching this week. I hope that this helped you guys as you're trying to get your own content to get out there. That's our intention at the Code Breakers, is to take things that are viral and help you see how your business can benefit from the information we learn. Thanks for watching.